All right. Hello, everybody. This is the first video in August. It is Anthony Stewart. This is Food for Thought, and we are questioning everything they've ever said because we want to know. Damn it. Yes. So we are. I'm using myself an example of an N of one, my own experiment, and all the stuff that I've noticed over the last few years into my continuous health journey, seeking truth as best as I can. Now, what today's video topic is they say trust the science. Now, I want to be very clear with this. I am not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I do have quite a few years now of looking into some science and studying, biology, physiology, some biochemistry, and specifically nutrition. And there is a lot of stuff out there that tends to be a little misleading. Now, we have a whole world full of misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, and what I want to do on this channel is encourage you to do your own research or make your own best decisions based on what you can decide. Your choice. Now, from what I've learned about science, what is science? Well, science is questions, and proving things is a lot more difficult than it may seem. What happens is there is the scientific method on which all science should be conducted. It involves posing a hypothesis, testing the hypothesis, and coming up with conclusions. Now, in the scientific literature, in academia, and throughout history, we have studies. Now, there are a few different kinds of studies. One kind of study is called epidemiology. Well, it's a questionnaire. It's an associative study. So they take a whole bunch of data through whatever means by either surveying or questionnaires or key data points with statistics, and then they come up with a correlation, and they see if there's an association that could infer an effect. Now, the problem is all science is trying to prove is that hypothesis theory. The problem with association is its correlation is never causation, which means just because something looks like it may, it does not mean it does. Now, they have something in a clinical controlled trial, which would be a randomized, double-blinded controlled trial, which they control for a certain variable, and they let the control group test that variable. Now, the problem is there's a lot of confounding variables, and there is healthy user bias, unhealthy user bias, reverse causality. There's a lot of things that kind of make these things a little tricky. Yes, a double-blinded, randomized, controlled trial is the gold standard in testing cause and effect. But here's some problems that I want you to think about, and this is where we inject some critical thinking. In the realm of nutrition, food science, it's very hard to ethically prove something causes something. Why? Because there are too many variables: sex, man, woman, age. Now, if you're studying nutrition and you want to test, we'll say, for example, the effects of coffee. You want to find out if coffee is good or bad for you. There is no way of getting a control group the same as the testing group and have the exact same metabolic health, same age, same sex. All these things have to be identical to 100% prove cause and effect. Those cause and effect statement cannot be determined unless they can prove it. So what happens is they test a group of 10 people if it's healthy for them or not. But what happens is it gets disturbed by all the variables. So you can't ethically do a test that harms people. So that's another problem. So over time, that's the missing link. Now with pharmaceutical research, and here's the problem I have, and this is personal, this is my opinion. They don't control over time. It's impossible. So over your whole lifespan, just because something got tested in a lab and deemed safe does not tell you what could happen in the future, and it's just almost impossible to do. So a lot of the science out there is actually best guessing. Now the problem with best guessing is we have corruption. Unfortunately, there is corruption out there. The money is funded and funneled towards certain incentives. So you have conflicts of interest throughout the pharmaceutical world, throughout the medical world, throughout the academia. You have very, very deep conflicts of interest. And just because they say, this causes that, does not make it so. Because they can't really prove it. You cannot say red meat causes colon cancer. It's almost impossible to determine that when you actually break down the scientific method, ethics, and the like. So what we have had over years is these epidemiology studies that are complete associative studies that they kind of deem cause and effect, or risk factors, which is another cause and effect statement that you need proof. It just because something associates with something does not make it causal. So now what I've done is I listen to a lot of these, I read scientific papers. I'm starting to understand them a little bit more, but what I do understand is they cannot control time. Because time is completely subjective into the control group. So over a period of time, is it from birth to death? Is it genetically identical twins that have the same same genetic properties and identical human beings? No. So therefore, there is already a lot of noise, and they have ways of weeding through the noise. And they have there's something called the Bradford Hill criteria, which cuts out a bunch of the noise and narrows your associations. And if it comes under this criteria, it's valid. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff, which I'm not even going to start to explain to you. I just want you to be wary about action statements in social media and in the media. This causes that is very hard to prove. Now, associative studies and epidemiology is great to pose a hypothesis. So this correlates with this. Now let's see if this causes that by doing a randomized controlled double-blinded trial. You see what I'm saying? So you got to be careful where you're getting your what you're falling for. And I know it's hard because there's a lot of people that say, yes, trust the science. The science says, research shows, studies show. All those statements are very vague, and they don't cite them. They don't cite the study. They don't quote the scientific faculty that did the study. Is it peer reviewed? And so all I'm saying is you got to take a little bit of a shred of salt with this and do your own research and understand that things aren't always what they seem. And it's very easy to cherry pick information, and we're not going to get into the history of why cholesterol is not bad now, or how they deemed calories. There's so much there that was little grains of truth hidden in a misleading statement. And then once you say something enough times, everybody believes it. And it's not even their fault, it's just it's what they say. So before it becomes they say anything, think about it. So that's where I want to leave it today. I want you to do your own critical thinking whenever you fall for something because they say, or research shows, or you must do. Think about it. Think about how is it possible that they came to that conclusion, and maybe look at their history, maybe some conflict of interest, maybe some things will jump out at you that might give you a little bit of friction to not believe it in the first place. So just all I'm saying is be very careful about who you trust and do your own research. Think for yourself. Don't let them say anything. And stay strong. Thanks everybody for subscribing. Hit that thumbs up and we'll talk soon.